discussion on that?
I'll move to approve the minutes and letters.
We've got a motion to approve the minutes and letters. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. We got a second and a third on the approval letters. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, vote on the motion to approve the minutes and the decision letters. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And none. Okay, ready for the first matter. Is the applicant here for Rebecca Dunkley property? Wonderful. You want to come up and sit at the table, and we will turn to staff for a brief summary of the variance request.
Case number 1 on the agenda is case 2018-00021, Rebecca E. Dunkley property. It's a single-family residential at 1035 Edwin Warner Drive. APN number 12908003100. Inspector is Logan Bowman. Council District 23, Mina Johnson. Applicant's request is to allow the following: reduction of the minimum FFE requirements for residential structures, building of a residential addition within the Zone 1 floodway buffer, and continuous mowing and maintenance of the floodway buffer. Appellant is Rebecca E. Dunkley, represented by Jesse Walker of Jesse Walker Engineering. Comments: Stormwater staff, no comment. Codes had no comment. Planning, no comment provided. Greenways defers to the decision of the Stormwater Management Committee.
Thank you. It's been so long since we've been here that I forgot to have the opening statement read. So let's move to the opening statement next.
Our opening statement to the applicant. If you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Stormwater Management Committee, you may appeal the decision by filing for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the committee's decision. You are advised to seek the independent advice of legal counsel to assure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been satisfied.
Thank you. So we'll turn over the floor over to the applicant for your presentation.
I'm Jesse Walker. I'm the engineer that represents Ms. Dunkley, who's here with me. Basically, she's been in this house for decades, and she would like to renovate it. The garage is about 2 feet lower than the house level. The house level does meet the 1 foot.
Thank you, sir. The house level does meet the 1 foot requirement from the federal regulations, but does not meet the 4 foot requirement for Metro. And she's requesting to raise the floor level of the garage area, which has the laundry maintenance facilities, and renovate it into residential area and have it match the house level. So the garage level at that point would be meeting the minimum standard of a little over 1 foot above flood level per se. Additionally, she's requesting to put an 8 foot deep addition on the rear of the house that would also include that, and then the box you see to the right there is a carport, which would be an open carport. All of these are outside the floodway, but clearly inside the first buffer area. The amount of increase in the house area per se would not trigger the substantial redevelopment clause, however the cost does. So percentage-wise, we're only at about 21%, so we would be below the threshold of the substantial redevelopment if you just looked at it from an additional square footage perspective. Additionally, we have, on the landscape plan, we have done considerable landscape additions, and the dark green triangle in the back, we're proposing to maintain that as a no-mow zone per se. We would like to still be able to mow the remainder of the rear yard between that line and the floodway line there and the front yard area around the house. As you can see, her entire house, really other than one little tiny portion of the front of the lot. The entire lot is basically either in floodplain, floodway, or in one of the two buffer areas. So really her hardship is just she doesn't have anywhere to be doing any improvement on this property per se.
Thank you. Is there anyone here from the public to speak in favor of this variance request?
I
Seeing
have
none-
an email that was sent in.
All right, wonderful. Let's hear it.
This was, and it's in your package as well, but this was sent in from Council Lady Johnson, and she's just stating that the variance looks reasonable, and it looks like a very reasonable variance request considering the proposed addition does not disturb the flood zone, and that she's saying to please feel free to share her support with the Stormwater Management members.
Thank you. Any other comments in favor of the variance request? Seeing none, is anyone here to speak in opposition to the variance request? Seeing none. With that, we'll turn the discussion over to the committee for questions for the panels, for each other.
There we go. I just have one question. Jesse, so what is the percentage of cost? I mean, I know you're not going over based upon area. So from a cost perspective, how does this relate?
Because she's going to renovate the entire inside of the house.
Okay.
It's like 75% based on the appraised value for Metro, of course, which is low. So, but probably even 50% of a real appraisal.
So what is the threshold? Is it 50%? 50%? And so if he had stayed below 50%, would they be asking for anything here?
They'd still be asking for the finished floor
For the finished
requirement.
floor?
Yeah,
Okay,
but not
okay.
the buffer disturbance in that case,
Right.
yeah.
All right. That answers my question.
I'm assuming that all the rest of the yards are mowed in the back in the flood zone?
Yes,
Buffer.
and currently we're mowing all the way down to the creek, but we're going to quit mowing. There's a well-defined area where that triangle is, where the backyard is flat, and then it rolls down into the creek, and we're going to quit mowing that part down in the creek and do some additional landscape improvements there and so on.
Okay. So the landscape that's shown here isn't existing, you're adding some new ones?
It's proposed, yes.
Okay.
Did we see that screen again?
Well, since nobody wants to talk. I think this is a reasonable request. This is a house, it's a historic structure, been there a long time. Property owners should have the ability to maintain their property and possibly expand it to a better use if possible. The finished floor elevation is 1 foot above the flood elevation. I know it's less than Metro's 4-foot standard, but it does meet the federal standard. Councilmember Johnson is a very strong advocate of stormwater. I think the fact that she supports this should have some bearing from a community perspective. So I would make a motion that we grant this variance as submitted.
I'll second the motion for the same reasons. Also, I mean, it's an existing facility, so it's not like the variance on the 4 foot is going to put more people in danger. It's going to make zero difference as far as emergency concerns and damage concerns, quite frankly. So, there's a motion on the table for approval of the variance as requested. Were there any comments from staff? I didn't think so. Okay, I didn't hear any. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, let's put a motion up for a vote. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion is granted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can't recuse myself on this next one.
Yeah, we're still good. We got 4.
All right, I'll make that when it comes up.
All right, great. All right, the next matter is Thornton Grove. Is the applicant here? Wonderful. Were you here a moment ago when they read the opening statement? Yes. Perfect. With that, I believe we've got a member with a
Right.
comment.
So, since this is being represented by my company, I must recuse myself.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we will turn it over to staff for a brief summary of the request.
Thank you, sir. Second case is case number 2019-00001, Thornton Grove, 3474 Brick Church Pike. Inspector is Boots O'Hara. APNs are 050000012900, 0500000129. Wait a minute, it's the same number. And then the third is 050000014600. Looks like we might need to correct one of those APNs there. But council district is 3. Council person is Brenda Haywood. And this location was previously approved on October 4th, 2018 under case number 2018-00024. Variance request was to allow the following: relocation of the existing stream along Brick Church Pike and its buffer, the disturbance of 7,965 square feet of the new buffer along Brick Church Pike to provide required sidewalks and road improvements, to permit accesses to be spaced less than 1,000 feet apart across the proposed buffer. Those would be approximately 600 feet. And 4, to permit 14,782 square feet of disturbance to the floodway and floodway buffer. 10,407 square feet of that was for the stream, and 3,880 square feet for sidewalk and roadway improvements along Brick Church Pike. The request for the variance being heard today is for permanent disturbance of 0.8 acres of an existing 25-foot wetland buffer, permanent disturbance of 3 acres of an existing low-quality wetland, and third, to grade 0.8 acres of Zone 1 floodway buffer in order for it to be converted from a low-quality wetland with appropriate vegetation. And finally, the temporary disturbance of 1.4 acres of existing low-quality wetland for temporary erosion control and floodway compensatory cut.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, let me finish, my bad. The appellant is Thornton Grove Green LLC. Representative is Hunter Dale, Dale and Associates. Stormwater staff, no comments. Codes, no comments provided. Planning, variance to disturb man-made wetlands must be consistent with site plan approved by planning. And greenways defers to decision of Stormwater Management Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we will turn this over to the applicant.
My name is Hunter Dale, Dale and Associates. I'm going to give a little bit of background on this, what I did. Speak. Got it. I probably presented a lot of information to you guys, so I didn't expect you to read it all, but this is a project that was a preliminary PUD that was approved in 2007 and then revised in 2017. As a part of that PUD, a hydrologic determination was done by Grow Environmental Solutions, which identified 2 streams on site, one running parallel to Brick Church Pike, one running parallel to the southern property line. With the preliminary PUD, there were requirements to expand Brick Church Pike, which required a stream relocation along Brick Church Pike. However, at that time, no wetlands had been identified, either in the hydrologic determination or any field investigation or anything like that. Then in 2018, April 2018, Grow Environmental Solutions submitted the ARAP initially for the stream relocation, and then our office started the design in June of 2018. One of the first steps we did as part of that design was we looked at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Wetland Inventory Map just to check and make sure there wasn't anything we were unaware of. Rebecca, can you see the layer for the wetland area? It is? Okay. And so this isn't the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, but it's pretty consistent. And on that, it was considered an emergent wetland. So that's usually a red flag for us of, okay, let's keep an eye on this. However, it was already encumbered by the floodway and the floodway buffer, and it wasn't in an area that we were disturbing. And then we looked through the hydrologic determination, and it was also not disturbed. But then we noticed that there was a Metro Water Services sewer line installed in that same area. So we pulled up the ARAP that they filed for that, and a wetland was not identified, nor were any mitigation identified. And we included an exhibit in part of our submittal documents. Can we get to those, Rebecca, so I can kind of show a map? I think the ARAP would be the narrative. Yeah, the ARAP is on page 12. Oh, excuse me. Go back to the file and let me see if there's a combined. Okay, yeah, scroll down a little bit. Right, go back up. Go down, sorry, there's a list of the wetlands. Anyway, does it have our exhibit on there? No, I wish I could drive because I know exactly where it is. Go back to the file again, the folder again. Can I? All right. Sorry. Just because I know there's, again, I probably presented so much information on this thing that it was probably ridiculous, but. Okay. So do we have the actual combined file that we submitted?
It's usually divided like pages 1 through 15, 16 through 31. Is that what you're talking about?
There was a 112-page document
Oh, gosh.
that had everything in there.
We did divvy them up. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I printed it out, so we can just look at this. There we go. Pass this, you guys can pass it around.
Thanks.
So that was the wetland that was identified as part of the AREP for the Metro Water Sewer Line project. So there was no wetland identified on the project. So therefore, at that point, we just assumed there was no wetland. Usually TDEC is pretty good about checking their ARAPs and things like that. So when we started design, there was no wetland from our standpoint. So the only variance at that point was to relocate the stream, which we came before the committee in October and did that. The ARAP had been resubmitted for final review in September of 2018 at that point. After we obtained the variance to relocate the stream, TDEC did a site visit before approving the ARAP and walked the area and decided that the environmental company at the time needed to reanalyze it for a wetland. They did so, went back and forth, I think all through December of 2018, and then January of 2019, new wetland delineation had been done, and the ARAP was revised to include disturbances of about 3.8 acres of wetland. That was the first our company had heard about the wetland, so we reached out to TDEC to kind of really understand the process. And Mike Lee, I had a conversation with Mike Lee just to kind of understand it, and what he said is that during the construction of the water or the sewer line for this, there was a lot of fill and compacted material as part of the storage equipment, all that stuff, and that it removed the pervious soils and disrupted the drainage patterns of the outfall, which caused water to back up on site, which in an area that was probably maybe it could have been a wetland, it actually converted into a wetland. So prior to that, the wetland did not exist. And I've got an email from Mike Willie stating that. I think I included it. And so, yeah, at this point, our client is just trying to keep the original PUD as is and disturb this newly created wetland. And in order to mitigate that, what they're proposing is that, today this is a low-quality wetland, and what they're proposing is that whatever they disturb, they're going to provide vegetation in an area that's undisturbed and basically convert a low-quality wetland into a high-quality wetland. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the variance request? Anyone here to speak in opposition to the variance request? Seeing none, with that, we will turn the discussion to the panel.
So I had a question. There's a email in the packet that discusses a potential greenway easement. How does that relate, or what's the?
Yeah, so normally, anytime we have a floodway buffer, I think planning asks us to dedicate that buffer to the greenways. And so we would just ask, does greenways have any problem with us planning in that to restore the wetland? Because what we're doing is we're disturbing these areas, but we're proposing vegetation in the areas that are undisturbed, and that would include the greenway.
Right. I just didn't see a response. I didn't know.
No,
if
they
it was
didn't have
all-
any
Okay.
that I know of.
Let me make sure I understand.
Sure, yeah, I get it.
You've got a plan that was approved by us not too long ago, and you had to come before us because you were moving some streams.
Yep,
At that point in time, there's no wetlands on this property.
that's right.
Before you could actually build it, the state determined there were wetlands on the property.
They asked us to do another determination.
And what's different on this plan than what was on the previous plan that we approved?
Nothing, other than the new wetland.
Is there not more mitigation?
Oh, excuse me, we do have a mitigation plan now. There's
That wasn't
another-
there before.
That wasn't there before.
Other than
right.
that, there are no improvements here that weren't.
Exactly, no, we did not revise any layouts or anything like that. All we did was just propose additional plantings to offset the disturbance of the new wetland.
Well, I think it's important to point out, I'm Kevin Estes, 2925 Berry Hill Drive, Land Solutions with the,
Could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
I'm Kevin Estes, 2925.
Oh, yeah,
Berry Hill
that's
Drive.
great. The fact that you realized to do that. All right.
We're the client is out of Connecticut. We're the local developer for them. A future phase of the townhomes, not one that's designed currently, but phase 2 or 3, I apologize, I should know my phases better, would impact additional areas of the wetlands, and we've requested Dillon Associates to redesign those, to remove them so that there would be no more impacts to the future improved wetlands. So we are redesigning any portion of the plan that we can. We have minimum separation along Brick Church Pike and set alignments and other things. And then I would also point out, and we're just pointing this out for fact, not that we're bitter or anything, but we have paid $260,000 for mitigation to the wetland banks as part of our permitting requirements with our permitting agencies.
In conjunction with this latest request or prior request?
This request.
Okay. Do we have something that shows me the area of the wetland that we're affecting?
That right there, the blue highlighted.
So everything on the, where you see the buffer lines there, everything to the east of that is wetlands.
So that,
Wow.
yeah.
And we typically, when,
What's the area? I'm sorry, Brooke.
Oh, no.
What's the area?
I think it's around 11 acres now.
The
Total.
existing
Of the
area of the
existing wetland.
All right,
And I think we're
come back.
proposing.
We need Dodd. All right.
yeah, and the National Wetland Inventory is notoriously inaccurate for its area of delineation. So we typically ask people to get a wetland delineated when they see one pop up. We just didn't in this case, but there was a wetland showing on this when it came before you guys before. They just thought it was encompassed by the existing buffers, I think is what you guys are saying, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it was just a field out there.
So it's not a new wetland since they were
Right.
here last time.
Yeah,
It's
it was
just
already
didn't
protected.
delineate the extent of it.
I got you.
It was already protected by the water quality buffers of the floodway, so it was an area we couldn't touch. to
So
begin
can
with.
you show me then back to where the area that we're now within the wetland and then where the protected areas would have been?
So the dark hatch line on that plan right there?
Yes.
That was the extent of basically of where the wetland was delineated by the National Wetland Inventory. And that orange line, where we're disturbing buffers, that's where it has expanded to. And when we talked to TDEC, because that was the question we had for Mike Lee is, how is it possible for a wetland really to expand that much? Because it seemed kind of excessive. And what he was saying is that, and we've got pictures of the construction of the sewer line, but that low point, and this is anything Metro did wrong at that point, there was no wetland identified on their ARAP, so they didn't have to do any mitigation or special construction practices. But basically, that area turned into a giant sediment basin. The edge of the stream was blocked, and it just basically blocked all of that low point, kept water from infiltrating, and now water can't go anywhere, and so it's backed up and created.
All right, let's go back and see if I can understand that.
Yeah.
Well, Chairman, could we ask to put up does Rebecca have this photograph?
Yeah, well, I didn't see it over there, but we've got some more stuff, if you want to look at it.
This Google Maps has done the best job of explaining this that I think any of us can.
Is this the photograph?
Yeah, this picture here that is up.
This is a Metro project, is that what you're saying?
The wetlands that are been created in the last 2 years are everything to the right of the creek if you're looking at this picture. Where you see the laydown yard of the sewer pipe, the compactor, the concrete mixer, and the backhoe. I do believe this was an area that was capable of turning into wetlands, but it had adequate drainage through it at that point that it didn't hold water to establish itself as a wetlands. When you build a sewer line, you normally run a compactor through the trenches and you compact that material so that you don't have water escape into the gravel on the sewer line and drain creeks and other things like that. We've oftentimes have drained creeks in the past because water takes the path of least resistance. So there's a good reason that it's done, and Metro did what should have been done construction-wise. That ended up blocking the natural flow of water into the creek and created this backup area, which has created an additional 5 or 6 acres because all that elevation is roughly the same elevation down there of water to back up. So when this came before you just 2 years, I know we came before you last year, but this project just finished.
It started in December 2016. I think it was finished probably, 5 or 6 months at that point, so middle of 2017.
This project's been finished less than 2 years. We did drone footage of it last October for this variance that we came in front of you on, and at that time, there wasn't visible evidence of water ponding. But as the winter progressed and we went through finishing the state permitting, the more and more it rained, the more and more water stood and showed visible evidence of this. So this really is, wetlands are a good thing. We're by no means against them. We'll think this is an appropriate area to try to improve these wetlands. They're right beside the creek, so establishing the right vegetation, the protective buffers, and trying to make these a healthy part of the ecosystem is an opportunity for us. And like I said, we paid a lot of money because the state doesn't really do mitigation anymore with wetlands. They just want it to go to the banks. We still are glad to come and improve these wetlands and improve them to high-quality wetlands. So we hope that this is a potential to have a positive impact to this area. But as you can see, this wasn't a wetland that was being respected or taken care of. It was full of sediment and equipment for a long, long time before it became and because when Metro left us, they left us with an area that didn't drain anymore. So that's why they're here right now.
All right, let me make sure I understand. Metro did a project on private property.
That's
through an
correct.
easement.
And they
And it's
didn't
your
return
opinion-
it back to the previous condition.
It's your opinion that prior to that project, this area would not have been determined a wetland, but because of the construction, it is now determined a low quality wetland.
Yeah, and it's not just our opinion, sir. the state came out, reviewed these ARAPs, didn't determine that there to be wetlands, and the applicant, Metro itself, has a legal duty, just like we do, to go investigate for wetlands, and they weren't present at the time of the construction either.
Okay, is there an opinion of the state that this was created by Metro?
Yeah, we reached out to Mike Lee, and we included the email response from him, and it basically said verbatim that no wetland was identified as part of the ARAP for the sewer, and that the construction of the sewer, and I think he worded it, compacted soils and removal of impervious or pervious soils created these wetlands where they weren't there before.
Any concern that that's not necessarily the case, or?
I haven't reviewed it. I do know that the wetland inventory layer we have is fairly old, so this would have been showing up years before the Metro Water Services project, but I haven't discussed it with Mike Lee or even read the email. But
We don't have a reason to believe what Mike's saying is not true.
correct, but there was an indicator of wetlands.
Of a
in this-
wetland,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And, okay, let's turn to, I'm going to ask about mitigation now. Carrie, do you have some questions about?
Well, I guess just for clarification, you had indicated there was a area of potential for wetland, you just hadn't delineated because it was already in the buffer.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
I'm
it
assuming there's
was,
some connection to,
But all the existing wetlands were on the other side of the creek at the time.
okay.
yeah, so it was protected by a water quality buffer, and at that point, we checked the ARAP of the original sewer line just to confirm with TDEC that it wasn't a wetland, and it wasn't listed as one.
And then just from a total number standpoint, I
Sure.
think you said the total area is about 11 acres.
I mean, it was scaled off of a PDF image that included the other side of the stream. I would say on the northwest side of the stream, it's probably about 8 acres.
Okay.
And then I think before it was around 3. That's what that hatching is.
Okay. And then the request is to permanently disturb 3.8 and temporarily 1.4 acres.
Well, it's 3 acres of the wetland, 0.8 of the buffer,
Buffer.
and then temporarily disturb 1.4.
Thanks.
So the map with the colors, Rebecca, that one. So the green is just temporary disturbance, the yellow is temporary disturbance.
Yeah, the green is actually just planting. We just had that because we didn't know if we could plant in the floodway buffer without getting a variance for it. The yellow is the temporary for erosion control and light grading that we would restore.
Right.
The pink would be the permanent disturbance. It's a sewer line, lots, and roads. And I guess the sewer line would be temporary, but I don't think you can plant over it. And then the orange is the buffer.
And then, because you're building there, but you say that you're going to mitigate that area, so is that across the stream?
No, so what we would do, and I think, and this is, Kyle and I actually talked about this, in the application we stated we would permanently disturb 0.8 acres and then mitigate that by revegetating an undisturbed area. So basically on this property, there's 8 acres of wetlands, we're permanently disturbing 0.8, and then another, somewhere else on site where there's a low-quality wetland, we're going to revegetate that and convert it to a high-quality wetland. That's our mitigation.
The permanent disturbance, you're saying 0.8, so less than an acre?
Of the buffer. The permanent disturbance of the wetland is 3 acres.
Okay.
How much area is the new wetland you're creating?
The area of the wetland that was created is around 8 acres on the northwest side of the site, I believe.
You asking about where the mitigation's going to go, Anna?
Yeah.
No,
The
so,
area shown.
right, so what we're doing is we're just, the existing low-quality wetland, we're just converting it to a higher quality wetland through vegetation. So we're not creating any more wetlands. We're just basically taking something that is a field that holds water and actually planting trees and wetland vegetation there.
What is this picture?
That's the mitigation plan.
Wow, an engineer didn't do that. It's not in straight lines.
Yeah.
There's definitely an architect talking that one.
I have a question. Is that reasonable that an area can be converted into a wetland in just 2 years by the outflow being blocked? It seems
Typically, they
short.
say wetlands form within 5 years. 2 years does seem like a short period, but like I said, I haven't talked to Mike Lee. To form the hydric soils, which is one of the 3 indicators of a wetland,
Okay.
I think it would take longer than a couple years, but I am not a wetland scientist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess one thing I would add to that is I have Rebecca is much more knowledgeable about this than I am. But if that was the case, then a lot of people dropped the ball. I mean, obviously, they got destroyed then through the sewer line. The state missed it through permitting, Metro missed it through permitting, and then the environmental science we hired missed it. And I have a lot of respect for all those people. I'm not, and when I talked to Mike about this, he did say these were extremely low quality at the moment. My opinion is these are emerging wetlands, but once they're there, they're there. So I think that these things would probably become more defined over the next few years, but even so, we've seen tons of wetlands over my career, and, you know, it was just planted with fescue. So it's an opportunity to kind of go in and get them started the right way with the correct sedges and vegetation.
So these areas, if you could describe this, Mr. Dale, is what exactly this means.
Sure. So that is just the vegetation. So, okay, we've got 8 acres of existing low-quality wetlands. It's basically just fescue, right? And so
It's all grassland.
It's all grass. You know, there's some pictures we took. It is grass. You know, there's some evidence of some water ponding, and there was some trees along the stream buffers and things like that, but it's basically just a field. And so what we're proposing is we're going to offset the areas of that field we're disturbing by coming back and planting other parts of that field with trees, you know, wetland vegetation, basically. So it doesn't take 40 years for it to establish. We're going to go ahead and jumpstart it and establish a higher quality wetland.
And that's what this planting is.
And that's what this plan is, yeah.
And what are the different areas?
Just different plantings.
Hatchings.
Yeah, and I didn't prepare it, and I don't know all the languages of that stuff. That's the landscape architect.
This is why we need Dodd. Yeah.
But yeah, you know, there's trees and I think this is probably similar to the stream mitigation plantings, I imagine. But again.
These are all native water-loving vegetations that are accepted by the groups that set these up. Julie Jones over at Gamble designed this, and she's certified and this type of stuff.
The last page indicates what the plantings are, if you're interested.
Yeah, I just need Dodd to tell me what that means.
If they're good plants or not,
I
well,
see
Rebecca
St.
knows
John's
that.
Wort, and I think, you know, we're talking about Harry Potter or something. All right.
I'll move to approve as submitted. I think that they're improving the wetlands to the greatest extent possible. And it's just unforeseen circumstances.
Got a motion on the floor. We see a second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. So there's a motion on the table and discussion on the motion. Are there staff comments on this one? No?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
since you mentioned Dodd's name, I would like to bring up that he had some concerns over approving this as it came originally, because the state permits were applied for, but not granted yet. And you know, he was very not happy to move forward with it at that time. And the only point I bring this up is, I just want to assure you guys that something like this will get caught by the reviewers or the engineers before anything's ever approved. And if there's any changes to the variance of substance, we will always bring it back to you guys.
Yeah.
So I was just trying to, if he was here, I was just going to try to make him feel a little bit better about the process, that, you know, it would have been caught one way or the other.
Yeah, it was caught. All right, thank you. So there's a motion on the table. Any discussion or questions? And you said that there has been payment into the mitigation bank. What was that payment you said?
$260,000.
All right, without any other discussion, let's go ahead and have a vote. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none. Motion's granted. Thank you, guys. One thing I thought of even before it was mentioned by Steve, although we've got the approval letters in here, it'd probably be a good idea to have the minutes from that same meeting included, because then we'd be able to see what discussion we had on that. Okay, let's move to the next matter, which is a Loft Hotel. Representatives, wonderful. Were you gentlemen here when the opening statement was read? Wonderful, we don't need to do that again. With that, then, we will turn it over to staff for a brief summary of the request.
Case number 3 on the agenda is case number 2019-00002, a Loft Hotel at 608 McGavick Pike. APN is 09511011900. Inspector is Donald Irves. Council District 15, Jeff Syracuse. Location previously denied on May 4th, 2017 under case 2017-00010. Variance request was to allow the following. Disturbance and encroachment to fill/eliminate .231 acres of wetland and encapsulation of 198 linear feet of stream for construction of a hotel and parking. Total amounts of 25-foot wetland and 30 stream buffer to be eliminated equaled .606 acres. Disturbance also includes removal of existing, unpermitted by Metro, 15-inch RCP pipe. However, pipe was permitted by TDEC permit number NRS 13.227 and NRS 13.227A. Disturbance and encroachment of .08 acres of 50-foot stream buffer, 30-foot Zone 1 and 25-foot Zone 2 of an unnamed trib to Sims Branch for construction of parking, alteration to community waters, multiple stream crossings less than 1,000 feet apart, placement of stormwater BMP in the buffer, waiver of buffer around newly constructed wetland to allow placement of parking, approval of past disturbances and encroachments, 60-foot wide crossing, and .032 acre wetland disturbance permitted by TDEC permit number NRS 13.227 and NRS 13.227A, and continuous mowing and maintenance of the buffer. Previously deferred on July 6, 2017 under case 2017-00016. Variance request was to allow the following. Disturbance and encroachment to fill/eliminate .179 of wetland and encapsulation of 198 linear feet of stream permitted by TDEC permit number NRS 16.124 that allowed offsite mitigation credits of .49 acres purchased from Swamp Road Mitigation Bank 2 at a 2.2 to 1 ratio. Note, TDEC considers the total amount cumulative impact as de minimis. NPDES permit number TNR 240679 and USACE permit for driveway crossing permitted under Metro Section 6.9.5, Table 6.3, and construction of hotel. Footprints approximately 11% of total land and parking. The total associated 25-foot buffers for wetland and 30-foot buffers for stream to be eliminated equals .226 acres. Disturbance and encroachment of .033 acres, a 50-foot stream buffer of an unnamed trib to Sims Branch for construction of driveway crossing permitted under Metro Section 6.9.3, Table 6.3. Alteration to community waters, multiple crossings less than 1,000 feet, placement of stormwater BMP in the buffer, waiver of buffer around newly constructed wetland, approval of past buffer and encroachment, allow proposed drive aisles to be counted as driveway crossings, and continuous mowing and maintenance of the buffer. Applicant's request today is to allow the following. 2 crossings within 1,000 feet. Appellant is Nimish Patel, 608 Hotels LLC, represented by Paul Williams, Best & Associates Architects. Stormwater staff had no comments. Codes, no comments provided. Planning cited zone CL, defer to stormwater for review. Greenways defers to the decision of the Stormwater Management Committee.
Thank you much. With that, we'll turn it over to the applicant.
I'm Paul Williams, the engineer for the project.
I'm Gary Best. I'm the best of Best and Associates. And we're not touching the wetlands now. Not at all.
Yeah. We designed this project with one entrance and was approved by the staff. And the fire marshal requires two entrances. So we had to redesign and add an entrance. And we don't own 1,000 feet, so we couldn't separate them by 1,000 feet. It's basically, the entrance will be built over, what's it, Mills Creek? I think it's the name of the stream. Anyway, will be built without encroachment to the stream. The equipment will be set on the building side of the property with a crane. We will dig footings on both sides of the stream. We put a precast panel over that, so the stream will not be touched by any of our activity. We have utilities that have to cross the stream. The stream runs parallel to McGavick Pike, about 8 or 10 feet off of McGavick Pike the whole way. So we really have to do it. We plan on jack and boring a conduit pipe under the stream for the utilities. So we, like I say, we have designed this project to not touch the stream.
Okay. Anyone here to speak in favor of the variance request? Seeing none, anyone here speak in opposition to the variance request?
I have an email.
Sure, let's hear it. Thanks.
This is in your package as well. This is from Mill Creek Watershed Association. And they're stating that they take no exception to the current variance request of the two stream crossings less than 1,000 feet apart. The proposed stream crossing provide bridges that spans the stream. This approach minimizes disturbance to the stream below, which allows the water to flow freely. The Mill Creek Watershed requests the following: proposed landscaping to include native and adapted species selected for wetlands and stream buffer to comply with state and local guidelines. Stream and wetland buffers to be maintained as shown in the current plans. Metro to conduct regular site inspections during the construction activities to monitor the protections surrounding the wetlands and stream.
Thank you. With that, we'll turn it over to the committee for discussion and questions.
I don't think this is Mill Creek, all right? This is Sims Branch or tributary to Sims Branch. So anybody that's listening, it's not Mill Creek, all right?
Sorry.
So, but I mean, it says that in several locations, but it's not. This is a tributary. This is my former council district. So this is one of the little tributaries that goes down to Sims Branch. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that.
You can see, in this photo, you can see the guardrail that's sitting right at the edge of the roadway and how close the stream is to the road.
The only variance here is just a second entrance.
Yes.
So thank you for moving it out of the wetland buffers. We appreciate that.
We actually completely redesigned the project.
Yes, it's very apparent to us. And the request is made because fire marshals are requiring you have two entrances.
Yes.
Correct. I'll make a motion to approve it as requested.
I'll second the motion.
There's a motion on the table. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, let's put the motion up for a vote. All in favor of approving the motion? Say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, it passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. It's hard to believe that the loft request was that easy, right? As much time as we spent before. All right. Last matter, 4800 Lebanon Pike. Is the applicant here? Yes. Wonderful. Were you gentlemen here when the opening statement was read earlier during the meeting? Perhaps not. So let's read it again. Better safe than sorry.
That's right.
Our opening statement to the applicant. If you're not satisfied with the decision made by the Stormwater Management Committee, you may appeal the decision by filing for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the committee's decision. You are advised to seek the independent advice of legal counsel to ensure that your appeal is filed within a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been satisfied.
Thank you. And with that, we'll turn it to staff for a brief summary of the request.
The last case on the agenda is case number 2019-00003, 4800 Lebanon Pike, located at 4800 Lebanon Pike. APN number is 06513000900. Inspector is Donald Erbs. Council District 11, Larry Hagar. Applicant's request is to allow the following. Disturbance of the floodway buffer of Scotts Hollow to allow installation of required water quality features, mowing and maintenance, no buffer signage, and no floodproofing or raising of building to 1 foot above base flood elevation of 480.1 in AVD 88. Appellant is Northbound Investment, LLC, represented by Michael Dewey, Dewey Estes Engineering. Comments. Stormwater staff, proposed mitigation is not adequate. Codes had no comment provided. Planning site is on CL. Defer to Stormwater for review. Greenways defers to decision of the Stormwater Management Committee.
Thank you. With that, we'll turn the floor to the applicant.
Yes, I'm Michael Dewey with Dewey Engineering. This is Jeff Fleschauer with Avenue Construction. He's contacted us, just as a little bit of background on this project. Property owner was contacted by Codes a few months ago as Codes went to visit this property. It was they were going to condemn the property if improvements were not made, and so that's when Jeff Fleschauer got involved to make the necessary improvements to meet the Codes requirements. With that, required a building permit and stormwater sign-off. Since the value of the improvements were greater than 50% of the value of the property, it triggered significant redevelopment. And since the building is greater than 10,000 square feet, a grading permit is, or the site disturbance was greater than, site disturbance and building is greater than 10,000 square feet, a grading permit would have been required. As you can see, this property is 90% encumbered in floodway and floodway buffers. So if it were a vacant site today, it most likely would not ever be able to be developed without a variance from you guys. We worked with staff. Our initial request was to remove there's a smaller building on the northeast corner of the property. Yes, that white building. We are removing that to create some additional pervious area and floodplain storage. A portion of it will be converted to kind of round out the parking areas. But again, the impervious areas will be decreased at the end of this project, as from today's. The floodplain varies quite significantly across this property. from 477.5 to 481.2. And so with that, the east side of the building is currently in the floodplain. The floodplain elevation on the east side of the building is 481.05, and on the west side is 477.5. So a majority of the building is above the floodplain. There is a quarter of the building that is below the floodplain. We worked with staff on that, and they asked us in our pre-app to floodproof to 1 foot above. We looked at that option, and we couldn't get it to 1 foot above and make access into the building still work. So what we are doing is bringing a portion of the building. It's all on slab now. We're raising a portion. There's a shaded portion on the drawing that you may have, which is up there. That shaded right around the cursor is the portion of the building that we are raising, building the slab up to bring it above the floodplain elevation. In addition, at our pre-app meeting, we were trying to keep the buffer disturbance to an absolute minimum. There's only 2,000 square feet total, roughly 2,000 square feet total of site disturbance total for this project. So we're trying to keep the site disturbance to a minimum. But during our pre-app, staff mentioned that we may want to provide water quality. So we are providing water quality we're treating the entire existing roof with a water quality unit, and that is located in the rear of the building, where the cursor is, and we're discharging into the stream. Again, our goal was to reduce the amount of disturbance to the floodway buffer. We understand that that water quality measures are required. We've submitted a LID waiver for. Otherwise, if we did not submit a LID waiver, we would need some sort of other BMP, such as a bioretention area, and we felt that installing a bioretention area would create additional floodway buffer disturbance. The staff comments, our requests are disturbance of floodway buffer of Scotts Hollow to install installation of required water quality features, mowing and maintenance. Those three, I'm not sure that those are ones that we need to request from you guys. The no buffer signage, we are certainly willing to put up signage for the buffer, so that one can come off. And then the number 5, no flood proofing or raising of the building to 1 foot above base flood elevation of 480.1. We are raising the building to above the floodplain elevation, but we just can't make ADA work to get the entire building 1 foot above the floodplain elevation. So that is a request that we still have. I just wanted to clarify that we are raising the FFE, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor of the variance request? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition to the variance request? Seeing none, we'll open up the discussion to the panel for questions for the applicant, discussion with each other.
Hey, Rebecca, is this just a screenshot, or are you actually on Metro's GIS here so I can see a little bit further out? I know there's like the quick sack and there's some other things in this area. I'm just curious if they're also encumbered in this floodway and floodway buffer. It'd be,
It's going to
take a while.
flood layer to load.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, that's probably not far enough out anyway. So So it sort of encroaches closer to Lebanon Road, then it starts to push back, maybe? I know that's like a Walgreens on the corner. Maybe, okay. That may be- Yeah, okay, there we go. All right. All right. Yeah, there's a lot going on down in the Scotts Hollow area, has been for years. Wow. So I have a question for legal, I guess. Can we ask questions about ownerships and purchases and stuff like that? Is that something we can, I'm curious about that.
Like, I mean, it's more what you consider in making your decision than what you ask that I think is, of concern. But there is a list of criteria that you can consider in granting a variance. And, I mean, I think you can ask any question you want as long as you kind of stick to the criteria that you're supposed to consider in making your decision.
Well, if I get too far out of line, you just correct me, okay? So I guess my question is, so this property, how long has it been in a state of disrepair? Or is it vacant now, or is it occupied?
Yeah, Jim McDance had.
Why don't you identify yourself and turn your microphone?
I'm Jeff Fleshour with Avenue Construction. I've been working with Jim, and I contacted him 6-8 months ago and said, hey, I've got an owner that I know you've kicked everybody out of the strip center, and there were code violations. I'm trying to help this guy get this renovated. Michael Hyman was involved. Michael came in and did a complete redesign of it, and we priced it out for him and tried to get him within budget. He's an out-of-state owner that tried to manage the building through other means, and it wasn't. They didn't do him any favors.
So I guess my specific question is, like, this current owner, has he owned this property for a long period of time?
He's owned it, I believe, 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And prior to 3 years, was this being leased or occupied prior to his purchase?
Yes, sir. Pretty much the tenants that you're looking at, Roy, out there, the tattoo type tenants were in this facility.
Okay.
So we're trying to clean it up and make it look, as good as we can as far as the Tulip Grove and Lebanon Road. Otherwise, the other three corners are good, good looking, good representation, a good feel to the.
So you're not the owner, you're the contractor that's representing the owner?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's a real struggle for me. So you have an owner that's had a building and maybe hasn't kept it up into a state of repair. I guess it's possible that it got to a point where codes has intervened. And then now, based upon that, to do the improvements that are necessary will cost more than 50% of the value of the building. I don't know where I'm headed on this, I'm just thinking.
Yeah, I guess along those lines, though, would that not happen anyway over time? I mean, at some point in time, there's going to be a better use for this property than a strip center, you would think, on Lebanon Road. Maybe not.
Well,
maybe you can't because of the size of the
based
property.
upon its encumbrances,
Yeah.
what would you put there? And so I guess what I'm saying is if I owned it, probably I'd sure as heck make sure that I kept it to a point of repair where I never got to the point that codes would be down there on me, and I'd even be into this issue. So to a certain extent, the fact that he's let it deteriorate, he's caused a problem. Is that a fair assessment? Mr. Chairman?
We don't know. He could have bought it like that.
Well, that's what I'm asking. That's,
He bought, I think he's owned the property for about 3 years. He did put a new roof on it, as you can tell from the aerial view. He has made some improvements, none of which, he had some code violations with electrical and mechanical, and it was at that time that Jim went down there and said, hey, these guys, they can't stay in here any longer. You're going to have to make some repairs. And to the extent where he had some legal issues associated with the leases, and he has since taken care of all the monies involved with the fact that they had to go elsewhere. So he's trying to do everything he can, and now, like I said, he contracted with Michael Hyman over a year ago. So even though he's only owned it 3 years, he did make a concerted effort about halfway into the ownership to do something with the parcel.
So on our inventory of flood damage for 2010, do we know, was this flagged as being significantly damaged, or do we have any information on that? I mean, I know it may take a while to load that one, but, or do you know what happened in this property when we had?
In the flood image, there's no.
Yeah, but by the time those
Sure.
images were taken,
Sure.
you know, all the minor tributaries had already resolved, so it doesn't tell you a whole lot.
Right.
So there's, what is green? All level 2?
While y'all are looking at that, would it help if I were to read the considerations for variances?
Sure.
Won't hurt.
In approving variances for applications, the Stormwater Management Committee shall consider all technical evaluations, all relevant factors, all standards specified in other sections of these regulations, and the danger that materials may be swept by floodwaters or streams onto other lands to the injury of others, the danger to life and property due to flooding or erosion damage, the susceptibility of the proposed facility and its contents to flood damage, and the effect of such damage on the individual owner, the importance of the services provided by the proposed facility to the community, the necessity of the facility to a waterfront location in the case of a functionally dependent facility, the availability of alternative locations not subject to flooding or erosion damage for the proposed use, compatibility of the proposed use with the existing and anticipated development, the relationship of the proposed use to the comprehensive plan and master drainage plans for that area, the safety of access to the property in times of flood for ordinary and emergency vehicles, the expected heights, velocity, duration, rates of rise, sediment transport of the floodwaters, and the effect of wave action, if applicable, expected at the site. The cost of providing governmental services during and after the flood conditions, including the maintenance and repair of public utilities and facilities such as sewer, gas, electrical, and water system, and streets and bridges. And then the following evaluation criteria will apply to appeals involving modification of the buffer. Modification of the buffer area shall be the minimum necessary to achieve a reasonable buildable area as decided by the committee. Other requirements for building in the floodways shall still apply. Where possible, an area equal to the encroached area or the equivalent stormwater management practices shall be established elsewhere on the lot or parcel in a way to maximize or provide equivalent stormwater quality enhancement and protection. Variances for reducing the no disturbance buffer require a written recommendation, positive or negative, from the Greenways Commission. Redevelopment, as defined in Appendix B of this volume, within intensely developed areas may be exempt from all or a portion of the requirements of this subsection, provided feasible alternatives or BMPs to benefit stormwater quality are applied. Upon consideration of the factors listed above and the objectives of these regulations, the Stormwater Management Committee may attach such conditions to the granting of a variance as it deems necessary to further the objectives of these regulations. Variances shall not be issued within any designated floodway if any increase in flood levels during the base flood discharge would result. And then conditions for variances. Variances shall only be issued upon a determination that the variance is the minimum necessary, considering the flood hazard, to afford relief. And in the instance of historic buildings, a determination that the variance is the minimum necessary so as not to destroy the historic character and design of the building. Variances shall only be issued upon a showing of good and sufficient cause, a determination that a failure to grant the variance would result in exceptional hardship, and a determination that the granting of a variance will not result in increased flood heights, additional threats to public safety, or extraordinary public expense, create nuisance, cause fraud, or victimization of the public, or conflict with existing local laws and ordinances. Any applicant to whom a variance is granted shall be given written notice specifying the difference between the base flood elevation and the elevation to which the structure is to be built, and stating that the cost of flood insurance will be commensurate with the increased risk resulting from the reduced lowest floor elevation. And finally, the Stormwater Management Committee shall maintain records of all appeal actions and report any variances to FEMA upon request.
I think we should all memorize that.
You don't have to
And
memorize
cite
it,
that
but
at
if
our
you
next
can kind
meeting.
of keep your deliberation kind of within those parameters.
That's pretty broad. But actually, I honed in on one thing you said there.
Okay.
And I think that's flood damage or let's say these buildings are occupied, have materials in them, there's a flood, there's a lot of damage. And so I guess my question, you talked about flood protecting or flood proofing the building, and you said that was not possible because of ADA standards, but I'm not sure that you can't flood protect a building. And I think you might still be able to. During a flood, you may not have access to the building, but I think there's things that you can do around the entrances that can be placed during a period of flooding that might count. I mean, is that possible, Steve? I mean,
Yes, sir. So you could flood-proof the buildings. If there's glass to the bottom of the ground, then you could take it out and then build a wall and then start with your glass again. And then for your door entrances, you could either replace them with flood doors, which may not be aesthetically pleasing if it's retail, but you could still use a glass door with potential flood gates that will just be bolted before a flood and tightened up.
Right. So, I mean, I think the existence of the building, allowing it to remain, is not going to increase any damages or any. It's there. It would still be there. One building would be removed, but I think you can flood protect the building, and so that's something that I took out of that long list of items that we could consider, which might be significant.
It's a significant cost.
Well, I understand it is, but the fact that this building is in a state of disrepair, the fact that repairing is going to cost you over 50% of the value of the building, I think that those codes are there for a reason. I'm not an attorney. We have an attorney sitting here, but that's why we have those. I mean, you've got an area here that significantly floods. It's encumbered significantly, and if you've got a building there and you allow it to get to a state of disrepair, then the city would, and probably the public would say, hey, it's probably a good idea to not replace that building. So to keep it there, I think is going to cost significantly. I've got it, but otherwise, I don't know what to do. I couldn't support it. So I think that the building has to be protected in some way, and all the elements within the building. It's just going to flood. It's going to create damage. Somebody's going to pay insurance on that. So that's where I stand right now.
Roy, that is one thing that we talked about with staff during our pre-app was flood-proofing the building to 1 foot above. And we looked at the flood doors that Steve pointed out to us. And so we looked into that. And we found that it was more feasible for the property owner to raise the FFE to actually install a new finished floor elevation, a new finished floor in the building than it was to flood-proof each and every door.
I took it that you said part of the building wouldn't be raised.
Part of the building will not be raised, but since the floodplain varies significantly across this property, a large majority of the property, we're raising the portion of the building that's below the floodplain.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, there's not going to be a portion of the FFE that's below the 100-year floodplain.
Okay, that confused me. So, I mean, that may clarify as long as the entire finished floor elevation of the building is 1 foot above, and you're saying that?
No, it's at the it's at the floodplain elevation or above.
Okay, but that's not our standard. Our standard is 1 foot.
That's where I have questions. So you're telling me that the floodplain differential across this property is 5 feet?
Yes, it's.
How is that? What's going on here? This is not normal. So
no.
So we're not really talking about like the Cumberland River or the Harpeth River where you're gonna get that very, very minor fluctuation. So when somebody suggested that our flood maps don't show that there's flood damage here, well that's very possible because our flyovers came a couple of days afterwards. Unless you're on the Cumberland or you're on the Harpeth River, you're not going to be able to go to Metro Maps or RGIS and see actual water there. And that's why we use that color coding that codes did to assess each structure. There was a lot of people in a lot of different agencies and even some private entities that helped us out during the May floods. And we went from road to road, building to building, and assessed each pipe and each building that we had, and we color-coded each building that got flooded. Rebecca showed earlier that this was green, which is level 2, which means that water probably came to the building. Somebody from codes probably went and saw a watermark somewhere probably on the building. Interior, probably not a lot of damage. That would probably be a level 3 or 4, but they probably saw a watermark somewhere on the building. So going back to the question, I know I circled around a lot. If we have a flashier stream that has more topography, you could probably get a lot more elevation change versus something that would be like more flat, like the Cumberland River or Harpeth River.
So most likely behind this building, the water's running,
From west to east.
well, I'm looking at the screen backwards from you, so.
From
It's
right
running
to
this
left?
way, all right? Am I correct? Can we go back to that last screen, Rebecca? What's this road? The water's running towards Tulip Grove?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
East to west, I'm sorry.
So it's running towards Tulip Grove, and so either we've got it's probably not a backwater effect, it's probably we've got a drop in elevation that's drastic between those 2 points.
That profile back up again.
Yeah, so we've got a drastic drop in elevation. And so as that water's coming this way on the screen I'm looking at, it's going to fall quickly and probably not go across that property. Am I thinking that right?
Well, I mean, the property is in the floodplain, so it will back up into the property, and it did get flood damage, so there is, I mean...
Well, where's the floodplain on that delineation? I thought most of this thing was in the buffer, not the...
Yeah, I think the floodplain just cuts across the east of the building there.
Can we get back to that last? Okay.
It's kind of hard to see with the hatching.
The pink, the floodplain, is that what that is? What's the green colored in?
That would be the 500 year.
Okay. Yeah, that's not a real, that's a...
I think on Michael's plan, he actually shows, if Rebecca could go back to page 1, I think there's a delineation of where the existing 100-year is. Sorry, page 1 of the site plan. So there's a dashed line at the very top of the screen, and it says existing 100-year. So
The long dash.
the other side,
Yeah,
it's up to the north. I'm going to
it kind of follows the buffer line when it goes down behind the building.
Here's where Michael's delineated the 100-year.
That's the 100-year? So the entire building's in the plan?
No,
It
it goes back to the east on the east side of the building.
If you can remember the colored map when you were looking, I think it was the pink color, you could see that the floodplain's coming up, and then once it hits the building, it probably comes back down.
Because they're taking that just off.
So if you look at the graded, the shaded area green, it's a little bit hard to see, but there is a building under there, and that building looks like it's about where the 100 years coming.
Yeah. You can see the line if you look real close to the building line in the green area.
In that section of the building in green, that's the part you're raising, right?
Yes.
Oh, I thought you were raising the entire thing, just that portion wasn't a foot above.
We're raising, no, just that portion, the shaded portion.
So you're leaving the roof line, you're just going inside that portion and pouring a higher level?
Raising it 6
But you're raising
inches.
to the flood elevation.
To the flood elevation, above the flood elevation, 100-year flood elevation.
Not doing that because then you would not have enough headroom in the, you can't do that?
We can raise are you saying raise?
Yeah, so you're not raising it, it's not going to be a foot above.
Right.
Why not?
Because on the front of the building, then you would have a side, if you raise that.
There's no way to enter the building and stay ADA compliant.
Right, we'd be 18 inches above the sidewalk, or above the parking, rather than 6 inches above.
Is this building one elevation all the way across?
Yes, sir.
today? I don't understand. So theoretically,
There's that drastic of a drop.
I said you're not going to have a drop in elevation across the inside of the building once it's flooded. So,
The water's not going to do that. That's what's crazy. But the way these lines are drawn on this thing, it's not accurate of what's going to happen. There's really no way to know what the water's going to do until it does it.
yeah, once it gets in the building, it's going to go across the building.
Or it's going to come right out.
Or come,
Because that back end's would fall
It's
off.
going to do something.
Yeah, you just don't know.
That's why we were raising it
Yeah.
above the 100-year.
I got it. So What if you just remove that section of the building?
Well, the rest of the building is still not 1 foot above.
No, it is, because
No, it
it's
is.
downstream. The flood.
Well,
No, I gotta say,
not 1 foot above.
I got it, I'm just.
Well, parts of it are, right?
I'm just throwing it out, just out of curiosity, okay? So if you remove the part of the building that's below flood elevation, and you put a new parapet, you put in a new wall there, and at the section that you're at or above the flood elevation, what does that do to you? Does that help you some?
So we would move it.
I don't know, I got it. I'm just thinking, I don't know. I don't know what happens to water once it gets inside that building. I'm just saying, so if you take the portion of the building off that's flooded, then the water doesn't get in the building, and the rest of the building's a flood elevation, then you know what? That might be all right. So I'm just curious. I mean, it's...
Okay, what is the finished floor of the building and what is the floodplain elevation?
At the highest spot.
Yes. Finished floor elevation is 480.6.
Okay.
At the highest elevation of the floodplain, at the highest corner, it's 480. Floodplain elevation is 481.05.
And what about the lowest?
And the lowest is 477.5. It's at the edge of the property.
See, that's what I'm saying. There's parts of this thing that are 3 feet above.
Exactly.
That's what's
Right.
crazy.
Exactly. And so if you just remove the portion of the building that's being flooded, that seems to solve some of the problem.
Theoretically.
Theoretically. And this building looks like the Wild West anyway.
So if I may just explain our rules real quick, if I may. So the floodplain regulations say that you shall do one of two things. You shall either build a commercial building 1 foot above, or you should floodproof to 1 foot above. You could do both of those without a variance. What's happening here is they're improving the structure by more than 50%, which kicks in the floodplain requirements. So we still would give the applicant two options. Either build the minimum FFE to be 1 foot above or floodproof too.
Right.
And I think the request here is not to.
Basically not do anything.
Well, not to flood.
Oh, raise one end of the building.
Either or. The request is to do neither one of them.
With safety, when we met with staff, safety was there. You know, there's two different things here that we're talking about: floodway disturbance and water quality, and then safety. You know, out of those two, we wanted to try and hit both of those. So what we did was provide a water quality unit, which requires a LID waiver, and we're treating all of the roof. So water quality is taken care of with that. With the safety portion of this, we understand the rules are the floodproof it to 1 foot above, or FFE needs to be 1 foot above. We looked at that and we studied those options, and with the floodplain varying drastically across this property, we noticed, well, hey, if we raise this portion of the building to at least above the floodplain, then that would give some safety assurance that, you know, this would stay out of the 100-year floodplain. We could not get it to be 1 foot above, because if we did that, then 75% of the building would need to be raised up, and then you'd have a portion of the building that is well above the sidewalk.
No, I understand.
Or
I
well above
understand
the
what you're
pavement.
saying. You know, and the water quality aspect of it, it's not even on my radar screen. So I'm just looking at the flood. And this is just me talking, guys. I mean, y'all need to say something, but I guess I'm more looking at the flood protection, the safety. That's what you're talking about. So you can take this into the building and you can try to raise its elevation up, but you could just remove that section of the building too, and then flood protect the rest of the building. So I just want to hear what anybody else has to say.
Is all of that parking code required?
The parking that's existing,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah, we'll need that for code required parking.
Where generally would the delineation be that, I mean, in the worst case scenario, you're having to raise it 1.5 feet to get 1 foot above.
Correct.
And your drop is pretty quick. I mean, you've got it, just looking at I'm guessing that well, that's not, okay. Where, you said 75% of the building, I'm having a hard time seeing how it would be 75% of the building.
So what, it would be where the 79.6, so if you, if we can go to the plan, I can kind of point out an idea.
No, but I guess what I'm saying is if you're raising a portion of the building, you could do that throughout more of the building. You could
Yes.
alter the structure. I mean, you could have, because I would assume you're going to have, it's not going to be all one tenant. You're going to continue to have demising walls. Within each demising wall area, you could raise the floor elevation, whatever you need to do to make sure you're a foot above, to minimize elevation increases and minimize concrete and cost. So I mean, you could stair step this thing.
Yes.
And then
As long as you
at
make
the end, if you're having a hard time with ADA, either you work some ramps to make sure you're still doing it. It's not ideal, but you may have to change an entrance a little bit. But then, or you could flood protect that area, because then with that area, you're at least meeting, you're not a foot above, but you're providing this other type of protection. Am I not seeing that correctly, or what am I wrong?
You are. In the drawing that's on the screen right now, 79.6 is roughly, do you see where it says catch basin top 479.61? That text that's right in the middle of the building?
Yes, I see the text.
Yeah, right there, right where the cursor is.
Okay.
That is roughly where the 479.6, so you can see it's.
So you're saying at that point in time, existing floor elevation's a foot above?
That's correct.
So any improvements would have to be done to the right of that?
To the right of that, that's correct.
Okay. And I guess that's where I'm saying, it seems to me that as opposed to just the portion you're proposed to increase, starting from there over, whatever the next demising wall needed, you raise it a foot or whatever you need to make sure you've got your, and then you stair step it within the demising walls, and then flood proof the end, or do some alternative entrance so that you're ADA compliant.
Yes, yeah.
Is that feasible? Is there a reason that's not feasible? I understand that's not what's preferred and that's not what's proposed, but is there a reason you can tell me that that's not feasible?
It's cost prohibitive. You know, each door is about 25 grand. So, you know, when you start adding a retail center at each door, it gets pretty expensive.
Sure.
And he's already got $1 million in it.
Understood.
Reworking the whole front and making it presentable.
I think.
Go ahead.
Raising the FFE in lieu of doing the doors for essentially half of the building. Yeah. And we'd have to look into that. I don't, you know, if you're parking on the east side of the building, then you're going to be, you know, the parking's right up against the sidewalk, so you're going to have 18-inch difference. And so we would just need to figure out how to make that work.
Let me suggest this, in this, your decision. You can request a 30-day deferral, and what that prevents is a vote here that you may not like the answer to. Or we can take a vote, and someone will bring some motions, and you can see where this goes. Maybe it passes, maybe it doesn't. But one of your options at this point, at least, I'm telling you, is that you can ask for a 30-day deferral, which would give you some time to do that type of analysis and see if it's something that does work cost. Just based on the discussion, I'm afraid you might not like what may happen on what you've proposed.
Sure.
But so that's your decision. If you want to do that, you're welcome to do that.
I mean, I think you got lots of options here.
Yeah.
You could even take that portion of the building and totally demolish it and rebuild it, I guess. So flood protect it, elevate it, rebuild it. I don't think I could support it without one of those, though. I'm just telling you, so.
And with codes, you know, wanting to see some action on this, you know, we'd like to go ahead and you know, I think the.
Wait a minute.
Breaking stuff over there.
So if they demolished the whole thing and somebody wanted to come back and build it, then they'd be held to a 4 foot.
No,
it says
1 foot,
only
commercial.
residential.
Yeah. half the building's way above the flood.
That's right, but you have to take the worst case.
Yeah. If it's flooding in here, it ain't gonna automatically
Right,
stop.
yeah,
That's
right,
crazy.
While you guys are deliberating, there is the last page that will show you the floodplain as it drops through the property. So I think during the site, it only drops maybe about a foot or so, but as you get towards Tulip Grove, that's when you get the more significant drop-off.
Okay.
Rebecca's got it.
Yes, sir.
Oh, so it is pretty regular across the
So it's
building.
481 to 479. so it's
Across the site.
2
And
feet.
then as you get below that, you can see where it drops to that 476 right before you
Yeah.
get to.
Right. It's a little steeper, but not much.
And when we look at the old flood imagery, Steve had kind of mentioned it was hard to capture these flashier systems, but if you do look, and we look for the mud residue.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that shows
You
water.
can
Right.
see where
Yeah.
there was water ponded
Right.
on the site.
You know, that lower end of the building, you don't see anything.
Yeah, I mean, that water's going to come and it's going to fall quickly.
It's got to go through somewhere.
It's going to, it's going to go around, it's going to pond there most likely.
Yeah, in that corner.
Provided they provide proper protection on the building, it could be fine.
Yeah, I think that's my concern.
Or you're right, you just cut that end off. Then you
cut it
meet your
off.
parking requirements.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
You can redevelop the site. Wouldn't be something great, but you could redevelop it.
Hey, Dewey, is codes requiring us to make, is that what's going on here? Is there something pressing about getting some action out of this committee?
Well, Jim's ready for something to happen to this building.
No, that's the property owner.
Yes, sir.
I got that.
No, that's property standard.
Okay, all right,
Jim McDance.
all right.
If water quality is not the...
That's me, Dewey. That was just me.
I understand. That just creates more disturbance in the floodway for us. But it was part of our request, and we're happy to keep it. But, if that can come off of the request, then we can look at, it looks like the doors, the flood-proofing doors that Jeff mentioned were quite expensive. We can possibly look at doing that for the west side of the building and then raising the middle third or middle portion, middle quarter of it, if you're dividing it into sections of 4. The middle section, we could raise that FFE up, similar to what we're doing at the end, to try to get it 1 foot above. Again, this whole effort was to try to get the whole FFE, everywhere FFE is, get it above the floodplain elevation.
So, Mr. Chairman or legal, I mean, if they defer, would they be heard at the next meeting? All right, if do they have to go through some kind of new advertising or?
Sorry, we're all forgetting our microphones today. At the conclusion of the evidence in all cases heard at the hearing session, the committee shall discuss the case and render decision in executive session on that date or defer decisions for no longer than 30 days thereafter.
Okay.
So yes, I assume that if you
So we can defer ourselves
Yes,
if
you
we
can
want to.
defer.
And we
That's
can defer
correct.
this to the next meeting.
And staff, I assume, would then put it on the next agenda.
Okay. I know they're struggling with decisions, but I think that, in my opinion, the plan should come back to us more specifically on what they're proposing to do versus us trying to come up with some kind of a fly by, whatever.
You could put a bunch of conditions. You could grant the variance with a bunch of conditions.
Right.
Or you could defer it. You have the
Right.
options. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Roy, we've talked, and we can elevate the building 1 foot above the floodplain elevation, or floodproof it 1 foot above.
Okay.
So then what would be the variance request?
Water quality, I think. Is that right?
In that case, it would just be potentially at least the first 3 items. The 4th item, they're saying they could do buffer signage. and then number 5 would go away. I don't know where they.
I'm not sure we want the buffer sign.
On the front of the building, you're now entering a buffer.
Yeah.
So no, just without number 5, basically.
And number 5 was?
Where are the 5 things that you're, where's the
on
list
the,
of 5? I don't see this.
It will be the applicant request.
Okay, it's on that sheet.
Yeah, the applicant's request.
I'm sorry, could I make sure I'm understanding what's happening? So the applicant is withdrawing a portion of its application to the extent it was requesting a variance for the no flood proofing or raising of building?
I think we can make it easier than that. I think what we can do is in our granting, we can just deny portions of the request, which is consistent with what they're saying that would be acceptable to them.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion then to grant the request with respect to number 1, 2, 3, and 4 of the list of 5 variance issues. And I'm taking this list from the agenda we had for our meeting today. Which means that they're not getting the variance from the requirement they be either a foot above or flood-proof.
And if they came back and provided a plan where they meet that, then they wouldn't be granted a variance. But I don't know that that's really what they wanted. Or are you happy with that?
It makes the access into the east side of the building more difficult, but from a safety concern, we understand it.
Okay.
So 1 foot above, or we do the more expensive doors. So
okay, but you're okay with the other things that you requested you'll have to do?
The water quality vault,
whatever those other.
It's going to be, yeah. I mean, what we'll be approving is what has been presented, other than the ability not to comply with the requirements talked about in 5 here.
Yeah, obviously, if water quality is not a concern, then
well, that's my concern. All right.
Well, I mean, my motion does not take away your water quality requirements. So that's what my motion is on the floor.
And I'll second your motion.
All right, so we've got a motion and a second. So there's a motion on the table to approve other than the request, item 5, on their requested issues. Any discussion?
I wanted to check, staff comments indicated that the mitigation wasn't adequate. So wanted to find out what other mitigation can be done.
I believe the only mitigation proposed was the removal of the smaller building, is that correct?
and yes, and reduce the impervious area.
Do you know what percentage of impervious area you're moving? How much?
Yes. A net decrease of 554 square feet out of the 17, and the existing structure is 1,700 square feet. So I don't know the exact percentage, but it's 554 square foot.
And you plan on just putting grass there? There's no other plantings?
Just grass, but yeah, just grass.
So I think Rebecca will either correct me if I'm wrong or slap me in the back of the head, but when they came in for their request for the pre-application meeting, we struggled with it just like you guys are. We said, wow, you're coming in for a lot of things, and there is nothing that we're getting back. I think as an engineer, I think the denial of 5 is great for me. I'm not sure about the water quality, but I think we did struggle when we looked at this as far as what potential they could do. Rebecca, do you remember if this was a more wooded site in the back and we didn't know, or?
It's just heavy wooded, I know it.
I mean, so there's other options you could do other than plantings, even though we love plantings. You know, you could do additional water quality or look at some other ways to improve the site. And I think for the 5 things they were requesting, we definitely thought that there was not enough. There was a lot of take and not a lot of give.
Okay. Well, I think 3 is not really an option because of the site. 4, I think it's better not to have buffer signage on this property. The other 2 are kind of an existing condition. The big one was 5. And I guess the question is whether or not there is some other, they are running the entire roof system now into a water quality, correct?
Yes.
And so we've got that, which is an improvement, at least water quality.
Removing a building, which should be an improvement.
Moving a building, which is an improvement.
Right.
Is there anything, Rebecca, that we could add to that list that would be helpful, or is this something that's just unfortunate, the way the property is situated?
We had suggested a preference for treating parking lot over building. When they were here before, they, I don't think they were, in our meeting, I don't think they were proposing any treatment at the time. And possibly, I mean, there's not much you can do, especially in floodplain, as far as infiltrative treatment. So planting a few trees, just kind of tossing anything out there.
Okay.
I will want to point out that the water quality is not mitigation. Just like there's a requirement that says when you significantly redevelop a property, you have to meet the floodplain requirements. When you significantly redevelop the property and the building/other improvements are over a certain amount, it also triggers water quality requirements.
So water quality is a basic requirement. That's why you're saying it's not mitigation.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Does that help you, Deborah? Understand? I'm not sure it changes my thoughts on my motion.
I don't think it changes mine either. I mean, if there was opportunities to do that, then you could do it, but I just don't think there is.
Yeah.
So,
So any more discussion? There's a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. All right, we're ready for a vote then. The motion is to approve the variance request other than issue number 5 on this list and on the agenda. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That looks like all of the items. That's any other items to be brought? New business?
It's a pleasure seeing you guys.
It's been a long
If you
time.
guys are interested, I think now that since this one's approved, I think we may have 2 cases. Is that right, Ms. Penny? That's coming before us next week.
Only 2? That's good. All right. Anything else? Any motions?
motion to adjourn.
Got a motion to adjourn on the floor. Can I hear a second? Got a second. Any discussion on the motion to adjourn? Seeing none, all in favor of the motion to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.